Hey YouTube, today I'm going to be showing you how to replace your exhaust system on your XV250. This will be for Virago 250 as well as V-Star 250 and Route 66 motorcycles. The process should be the same for all of them. No changes, as far as I'm aware, have been made throughout its production run. These stainless steel straight pipes can be purchased anywhere from eBay to Amazon. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and it seems like a mixed bag. Whatever shows up at your door shows up, and sometimes the bins are kind of crappy and sometimes they don't line up, so we'll see what we get here. These pipes I have are the Terrazon brand from Amazon. They were about $170, and when they showed up they had a lot of black marks on them and oil and sludge. So what I've done is I've sprayed them down with WD-40, and I went over the whole pipes front and back with a 5000 grit sandpaper that I got from a auto body shop, or an auto paint shop for doing paint prep or wet sanding, and I got a good shine off of them, and kind of made the welds look a little nicer as well. So you might want to do that before you get started. Some nice tools. Here's my tool list. What I've got is a 10 millimeter for the head. The bolts that actually hold the pipe to the head are going to be a 10. I got a 12 and 14 for any bolts around the bike that hold the pipe onto the back. I think there's a couple 14s there. Got my whole setup of sockets, 10, 14, 12, that kind of thing. Pliers and screwdrivers are always nice to have around, might as well. And I've got a little parts tray to keep track of it all. Two other things you might need. When you start stainless pipes like this for the first time, they're going to burn in, and any oils that are on the pipes are going to sort of burn in a discoloration on the pipes. They have the potential for that. So before we even start, I'm going to degrease these pipes, and then before we start them for the first time, I'm going to degrease them again with brake cleaner. So we're going to make sure they're perfectly clean before we start the bike, otherwise we'll have blue fingerprints in them and all sorts of nasty stuff. One thing to have around, especially if your bike is old or has been stored outside, is lubricant. This is generic WD-40 from Walmart, PV blaster, some sort of penetrating oil to lubricate the threads as you take them off so we don't snap anything. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started here on the front cylinder. Here we are at the front cylinder. First thing I'm going to do before even trying to take these bolts off is they're an open-ended nut, so I'm going to put some lubricant in the threads on each side and just douse that whole area down. And then we're going to go ahead and get a wrench on those and see if they turn. They're going to be a bit stiff, so I'll start with this one right here, which you can kind of peek in from the frame. So that one turned pretty easy. I've got it loose. I'm going to go under here and see if I can get the camera adjusted. Okay, here I am on that second nut for our header on the front cylinder. So I've got a 10 mil on this ratchet, and I've got it doused down inside since it's hollow. You can see that thread. I've doused it with some of that spray lubricant, and see, it just came right off for me. So we're going to go ahead and loosen that. If this gives you any trouble, which it may if your bike has been stored outside with corrosion and it's old and these bolts are really rusty, I would use as much of that lubricant or PV blaster or whatever you've got on hand as you can. And if it's still giving you trouble, get a propane torch and make sure that this hose here is out of the way, and hit it with a little heat. One thing you don't want to do is put a ton of torque on that, because what you essentially have here is this threaded post sticking out. If you're trying to twist it, you're actually putting a force on that and you can crack it off. So it's better to be gentle with these things. Just try it, see if it comes loose. If not, apply some heat. It shouldn't take that much effort, but we got pretty lucky, so that's loose. And we're going to go to the other side of the bike and keep loosening up parts. Here I'm looking at the rear cylinder. This here is a fake pipe that we're looking at, so the real pipe actually goes down into the frame, which is another good reason to do this, so that you've got you remove all that weight down in there. But what's holding this fake pipe in place is two 12 millimeter bolts. They're kind of hiding behind that pipe there, so I'm gonna get my hands in here and show you how to remove that. So I've got a 12 mil on an extension. That's one removed. It's a nut. I'm going to set that in my parts tray. Now, there's another clamp right on the bottom here where the fake pipe meets this fake muffler. You can kind of see in there, right in the center of the frame, is a 10 mil. I'm going to make sure that's loose. I think it is from the last valve adjustment I did. I never tightened that back up, but we're just going to stick that wrench in there. Okay, now this clamp is loose under here and I've got the two bolts off. I'm going to hold this pipe out of the way, this little hose, rubber hose, and then we'll slide this fake pipe out. And that's this removed and out of the way. With that removed, you can start to get a better look at the hardest part of this install, which is these two header bolts. You see we've got good access to this, but pretty poor access to this. One of the things you can do is remove your ignition cylinder, which is on the other side. That requires specialty Torx bits, security Torx bits, and I have some, but I don't have them handy, and I kind of want to show that this can be done with just simple tools. So before we go any further, I'm going to take my spray lubricant and just douse these down. I'm going to go and peek on the other side, and I'll get some spray lubricant on that. Let's get my 10 mil wrench. That of course fits, and we'll see how tight this is. So that one cracked loose pretty easy. Just gonna make sure it's loose, and we'll keep going, and we'll see if I can get this wrench over here. It looks like I've got just barely enough room on that rear cylinder, or rear bolt on the other side. Maybe I can slip the open end wrench in there. No. Okay, after about 20 minutes of messing around with that other nut, I just can't get it off, so I'm going to take this ignition off. I tried. So what I've got here is one of these sockets that goes on a 1/4 inch attachment. This here is a T30 Torx screw, so we'll see how tight these are. Hopefully they've got some good Loctite on them, since they are for your ignition. So yeah, big snap there as it cracks loose. And I'll go ahead and take this off. Alright, with that ignition moved out of the way, we've got a lot more access to that, so definitely recommend that. I think if you've got just the right 10mm wrench, you can probably get around doing this, but definitely recommend it. Again, that's a T30 nut on that, or a screw that holds that in place. Okay, now that our headers are loose, there's one more clamp bolt on the very bottom. This is what takes your rear cylinder and mixes it in with the exhaust from the front cylinder, way underneath the bike on the right side. Go ahead and douse that with any sort of lubricant, WD-40, PB Blaster, and then try taking it off. Here's a quick shot at that clamp from the top side, right in there. So what I've done is I've sprayed it down liberally, and that should knock everything loose. I've got that bolt loose, and so now I'm going to stick my flathead screwdriver in here and between the clamp and the pipe, just make sure that's cracked loose, and then we can hopefully remove this pipe without too much trouble. Alright, our last bolt is that one right in the middle. That looks like a 14 to me. I'm going to take that off and kind of leave it loose and just kind of see how everything feels, and what wants to fall off the bike and what doesn't. Okay, so let me give you a good look at this. The whole system is just ready to fall off the bike, so I'm going to get us a good frame here. I'm going to hold the pipe on the bottom and then loosen that that last bolt with my left hand, and we'll support the whole exhaust as we drop it from the bike. So it's all kind of hanging here. What I'm noticing is where that clamp was for the rear cylinder to mix in with the front cylinder. The clamp is so stiff it's not letting go, so we're all kind of jammed up on that back cylinder. Reach under here and try to twist that. so I had to kind of shake the whole thing. Okay, we have our stock system removed. There's one last thing we need to check before we start really getting to work installing the new system. There are two crush washers on your head that sort of seal your exhaust to the bike. You can see it right in here. It kind of looks like part of the head, but it's copper in colors because it's a copper crush gasket. You're going to want to make sure that those stay with the bike. If they're not on the bike, they might have fallen in here, somewhere on the ground, or maybe they stayed with the pipe itself. So I've got one on the rear. I'm going to check the front. And I've got one on the front. So we're all good to go. And then I'm going to move this OEM system out of the way, and you can see just how much weight is on this. It's not super heavy, but there's a whole lot of stuff you're kind of taking out of that whole rear end of the bike, and hopefully that's is letting some more airflow. But once we get that out of the way, I'm going to take my degreaser and I'm going to wipe these pipes down thoroughly and make sure that there's as little oil on them as possible, and then we'll get to work installing them. Okay, so we got no exhaust on the bike. I've gone ahead and wiped both of those pipes off, and I'm just going to kind of dry fit this this rear cylinder. Since I know it's going to be the trickiest, I want to do it first. Just going to kind of slide it in there and see how it fits up. And I'll talk along and tell you anything I notice. So it's going to be a pretty tight fit because of this frame mount. And then let's slip it in there and line it up there. That is a crummy fit. You can see that I'm not flat, I'm sort of like this. I've got it pressed almost firmly against the head there. Alright, so I'm going to have to bend this in and kind of twist it. Okay, I got this sort of mocked up here. If you zoom in, you can see I'm very flush against the head. Autofocus isn't really helping, but that there's flush against the head, and I'm a good ½ inch off on this mount. So that's just sort of the fit you're going to get from the factory. I've tried to bend that tab on the rear with my needle nose pliers here, and I got pretty close in terms of meeting up flush. There's just that gap I've got to take out, and then I'll tighten it all down. Okay, I have the pipe installed. One thing I want to note is that this, I'm on the right side of the bike, and this nut here, it doesn't have clearance to go on with the pipe in place. So what I had to do was loosen this bolt and kind of twist the pipe up, thread that on there, twist it back, fasten it down, and then crank it down. And I'm shaking the whole bike with it, so we're pretty tight. Haven't tightened this down yet, but I'm going to do that next. And that's one installed. One more thing I want you guys to be careful with is this vent tube. This is a crankcase vent, and in its stock location, it is really close to this pipe. So that rubber is going to start melting away. What I'm going to do as a stopgap is in here, there's sort of a metal tie. You can see that's clamped onto this hose. I'm going to pull this hose down as far as I can and then clamp it in with that. And that's going to hopefully help keep that rubber from burning away on the pipe. And now I've got maybe an 1/8 inch of clearance, which still is not great, but for now that'll have to do, and maybe later I'll put some exhaust wrap right there to sort of remedy that. Okay, run into trouble here, which is to be expected. So I'm fitting up the front pipe now that I've got the rear fastened down. I'm going to put this pipe up flush against the header, and you want to look right in this 10 mil hole that I'll point out, see just how far off they are from where they should be. So look right here. Okay, I've got the front pipe mocked up. What I did was I set the pipe with the rear down on the ground. I used my foot and just pressed that, bent it back, so now it lines up. I'll give you a top-down view. You can see they're not exactly parallel. From the side, looks okay. Got one more problem to solve. Here I've got this nut tightened down all the way to where there's no more threads. There's no more threads for this nut to grab, and we're loose on both sides. So this flange here was not made thick enough for it to actually clamp. I'm gonna have to run inside and see if I've got any washers, and if not, I'll have to run to the hardware store. So that's a bummer, but we'll keep moving along. Hopefully I won't need more than 1 or 2 washers in there, because that's kind of a cheesy look, washers on your exhaust system, but it is what it is. Okay, here we are. We are all done. We have it installed. A couple more things I've noticed. Here's the final fitment. Less than ideal. From the side, boy, I love living in a city. Ain't that just a pleasant sound? From the side, looks okay. What was going on here at the head is this pipe was, whole thing is cocked too far this way. So it's meeting up, and then to get it flush, I've pulled the whole pipe in, and it's pivoting on that bolt back there. So what I'm gonna do at my friend's house is I'm gonna put this in a vise, I'm gonna heat it, and I'm gonna put a little bend in it, and that's gonna kick this whole pipe out. It's also interfering on the frame. It's hitting the frame right here. I've got it snug, and then to deal with the issue of the bolts not being, or this flange not being deep enough, let me see if the autofocus will cooperate with me. I've just put some 12mm bolts in as washers. I didn't have any washers thick enough, so I put those in there, and those will be a temporary solution as well. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a first start. Before I did this, I just wiped both pipes down with brake cleaner and a rag. Made sure there's no oil, especially close to the motor. That's where it's gonna be the hottest and where you're gonna see discoloration first. All right, this is a cold start. We'll see how this sounds. So that's the pipes fully installed. I just took it for a quick rip around the parking lot, and man, they are loud. Before I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to order some fiberglass packing for the baffles in them. That sound is with the baffles in. I can't imagine what this thing would sound like with the baffles out, just straight pipes dumping. that'd be loud. So I'm gonna have to do some bending up here to make them fit flush, and I think there's a couple of exhaust leaks. Additionally, I'm gonna take my idle set screw, my idle air mixture, just behind this this fuel pump. I'm going to take it out a couple turns. That'll richen up the idle mixture. It was running a bit choppy, but other than that, I think I'm ready to roll until I can bend these pipes a little better and make them fit. Hopefully that was easy enough to follow and helps you guys out for installing these pipes on your bike.